when all of our brethren were being slaughtered, there were few, and one of the guys I do admire and thank God for was Franklin Graham. He's saying to the body, those who profess to be Christians, claimants, you guys, do you see what's going on over here? So we get a man that comes into the White House, President Donald Trump. He's got men of God praying for him, and I hear stuff, Doug, behind the scenes that I can't talk about. But I'll tell you one thing, the president knows, and I don't think he get in trouble for saying this, the president knows that the only one keeping him alive is the Lord Jesus Christ, and that as long as he walks in obedience to God, he's safe. Now, you won't hear that from the pundits. I honestly think sometimes that if there were an OK corral, there'd be more of claimants, out in the field or out behind the corral or whatever, than there would be bad guys, because everybody's willing to settle on everything. And here's the thing. People will argue over everything, but they won't deal with the obvious. And I made this statement, I stand by it. If you won't start fighting for the heads of your brethren, literally, those who have stood valiantly as their heads were cut off, with the last words on their lips being Jesus, as the camera zoomed in on those gruesome, barbarous, maggots from hell, the thing is that your head's going to be on the line. That's not a threat, but the indifference, the casual Bravo Sierra whale vomit, stomach tripe of the answers that people give. And I mean, I talk about that stuff. And hey, LA, I was down in Jackson Hole, and I told the story on the radio, and I'll tell it again. I had a smug Christian tell me that, we're all called to be martyrs. Well, he's drinking his fancy wine, and by the way, I kick myself for not, christening his head with the thing. And I'm not a violent person, okay? I don't do that. But he made me so furious. The attitude, by the way, we're no longer friends over that, and anybody who is smug about people being beheaded, children being raped to death, children being chopped up and eaten, mothers being forced to eat their own children. And have you noticed now, Doug, the drug cartels are turning to cannibalism?
Yep. Beheading first, cannibalism.
And I said that 25 years ago on talk radio. It's not that I was right. It's that God gave a warning 2.5 decades ago. And if you don't care that somebody else is being eaten, who because of their belief in Jesus, and I would even put up all the scriptures one day on cannibalism. I have never in my life been more furious, and obviously I'm working out my own salvation with fear and trembling, with a lot of help of intercessors. Thank you all for praying for me, but I have never been more incensed, more heartbroken, more furious, more pounding my desk, more saying, God, where are the people that will stand up? I want to put someone into, remembrance on your show. Years ago, remember when we raised money, meaning the Hagman listeners, and for Jeremiah and Jamie and Amanda, they all went over, to Iraq, Afghanistan. And the thing is that they made a difference. 3 nurses, I think they're all named Katie, 2 Marines, God bless you guys, and, a wonderful woman, the wife of one of the Marines, and they said enough is enough. 5 people were responsible for stopping with the prayer backup we did at Whitestone. You were there, Doug, you remember. But the thing is, for stopping the slaughter of 45,000 men and women. Well, there were Christians, no, but how many of those have converted in the meantime? And, we're to resist evil, the book of Hebrews says, the shedding of blood. That doesn't mean we go out and shed others' blood, but it does mean this. It means you stand against wickedness, you fight with all your might, you call on the power of God to give you the victory. As I've said on your show before, there is no victory apart from God that I can find in the Old Testament or the New, where if God didn't step in, they wouldn't have had the victory. America thinks they're going to go out and kick ass in Russia. They have no clue. And all these lying devils, and I went on Alex Jones about, 3 weeks ago, and I addressed the president on InfoWars. I said, Mr. President, call back all the fired generals, because those were the guys that stood against the evil you're now having to deal with. And I I can tell you this, I stand by my statement. And who am I? Someone that has been sounding the alarm for 25 years. Those closest to you do you. And I would say this, that if you have a national security advisor or anybody on your team that is an absolute convert to Islam or an apologist, you better look close at your own team, sir, because those closest to you are planning to do you. Now, the grace of God and the intercession of God's people, I believe, are making all the difference in eternity. And that's what it's talking about. So, L.A., when you're talking about what you're talking about, when we're trying to bring the biblical truth, that the historic twisting and perversion of history, you see, the reason they hate the giants, let me make it clear, they can't control the people. They don't want the people to know the presence of that kind of evil. They want to take the battlefield down to an intellectual, or they want to state that everything that's in the Old Testament is a metaphor, that the devil doesn't exist. It's just a metaphor for people. Well, where the hell do you think the word evil came from? Where in the heck do you think the whole idea came from? Why is there evil then? And to some people don't care. Evil to you and I is not evil to them. And so this is why I say, rise up, people of God, believers of God. Rise up, intercessors of God. Thank God for the women of God, the prayer warriors, the women are crying and saying, when will the men rise up? And, you know, the problem is, in one of the books, I think in Minor Prophets, it states that all the men in the midst of thee are women. Well, you hit them with female hormones for 3 decades. I don't think their offspring are going to come out as, you know, WWF fighters. So the thing is that we're in a battle, but we're in a battle for literally the seed of mankind. And by identifying the whole genetic interruption by fallen angels, hey, 1/3 of them fell. Somebody says, well, how many angels do you think fell? I said enough to cause the entire destruction of the human race, except 8 people, and Noah and his family, who were perfect in their generations. Doesn't mean they were morally perfect. But here's the deal. We're at a point now that people have got to have understanding of, I would say, the law of first mention. When it appears in the Old Testament, you can follow it all the way through to the Old Testament. You can follow it all the way through to the New Testament, or the New Testament, you can look backwards into the Old Testament, but God does not oppose himself.
Steve,
again, people, yes.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. 3-minute break. Hold that sentiment. I do believe it's important, but you had mentioned about those closest to you will do you. Et tu, Brute. And that's where we're at, of course, the last line at the moment of the assassination of Julius Caesar, including Marcus Brutus. Yeah, et tu, Brute. Folks, Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com, A.MARZILLI, LAMarzulli.net. Going to be right back. Give us 3 minutes. More on the other side.
Reporting on what the mainstream media won't, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on the Global Star Radio Network. Exposing the New World Order, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on the Global Star Radio Network. Stand by. Doug and Joe will be back shortly. Putting truth into action, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report, streaming live on the Global Star Radio Network. Please stand by. Doug and Joe will be back momentarily.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final hour on this edition of the Hagman Report. We have two excellent guests, Steve Quayle and A.MARZILLI, and we've been covering a number of very important topics and interesting topics from the conference coming up in Branson. Folks, you can go to gen6.com or gen6productions.com. gen6conferences.com. All right. Just before the break, Steve, you were in the middle of a thought. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you pick up right where you left off. And maybe Steve's not back yet. Well, let's.
I'm sorry, I'm back.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, Steve, you were right in the middle of a thought right before we took the break.
Well, I'm sorry. I just went to wash my face with cold water because I think I got steamed and I forgot where we were at. I'm obviously not going by my notes, but let me change that. And I just forgot. LA, at this point, when you're at Branson, and don't give away anything, when I say this, where is the Lord leading you now as far as integrating everything you've investigated, everything you've studied, everything you've written? Kind of where is your direction leading you? I think you just got back from overseas, did you not?
Yeah, I was in Portugal. My wife and I traveled to Portugal, and we filmed there for 2 weeks. And it's a new film. It's called Fatima, Miracle of the Sun, or a Harbinger of Deception. And I just put up the actual trailer today. We did the teaser a couple of weeks ago, but the trailer is up today. It's on my YouTube channel, A.MARZILLI. Go check it out. And the reason why I'm doing this, and already the backlash is just incredible. People are saying it's a hit piece against, Mary, the Bible, and Catholics, and no one's seen the film. So we actually did a caveat in the beginning of the film, basically saying that millions of people go to Fatima every year. Millions of Muslims circle the Kaaba stone in Mecca every year. Millions of Hindus celebrate Guru Puja. Millions of Buddhists go to thousands of temples all over Asia. People can believe whatever they want to believe, and we're not here to disparage anyone's belief system. But we are going to look at this one event called the Miracle of the Sun. 70,000 people in 1917. It's a 100-year anniversary. That's why I made the film. And in 1917, upwards of 70,000 people were gathered in a field in Fatima, Portugal. They experienced something. Something happened. It wasn't the sun. The sun did not leave its orbit. The sun did not come crashing to Earth. That's not what happened. There was something else. And it's been, without spilling all the beans of the film, what we've discovered is, as with a lot of this, the powers that be manage the agenda. They obfuscate the facts. They keep the facts from the people. Over and over and over again, we hear the same verbiage. Dull silver disk came from out of the clouds. Dull silver disc. And you remember in 1917, there is no verbiage. There's nothing in the lexicon that says UFO flying saucer. And I spoke with neuroscientists, research, people, professors, doctors, philosophers, historians, all across the board. We spent, 2 exhausting weeks. It was not a vacation in any sense of the word. And what this does is it just tag teams. It just links up to everything else that I've been doing for the last, for decades. It's all connected. It all points back to what I call the coming great deception. And Steve knows exactly what we're talking about. Something is coming, which Jesus warns about it, that there'll be, even the elect would be deceived. Men faint from fear for what's coming upon the earth. What the heck is that? And it's upon the earth. It's coming from somewhere else, in my opinion. Signs in the heavens, signs in the earth, and that's what we're seeing. And so Fatima, to me, was a harbinger of deception. Why? Because the 70,000 people in that field, many of them, their paradigm was changed completely in a 10 to 14-minute experience. And I find that astonishing. So that's why we made the film, or making the film. It'll be out in September.
Well, the nature of deception is increasing daily. And, Doug, did you see the article about Google going to use, in essence, a bunch of people that already have a bias against God to determine what they will allow even on their search engines, et cetera? And once you're on the list, you get, 3 strikes and you're out. Are you aware of that story?
Yeah, there's a story coming out of YouTube, Google/YouTube, about how they have teamed up with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, who are just label any and everything that is not, in their politically correct leftist mindset as, racist hate speech. And they're going to start creating special categories for YouTube videos to shield the majority of the public from the extremist content of both Christianity and the political right.
3 different groups involved in that, Joe. And the bottom line is you're labeled an extremist if you speak about Jesus, or if you criticize, or if you talk about Islam in any critical manner.
Well, again, I think it is becoming more and more obvious that when God sets the sheep and the goats, he's the one that determines, but the policies that are being put into place, if you're seeing already the hatred, especially in Canada now and its prime minister are incredibly becoming more, and by the way, I'm not bashing Canadians because I have tons of listeners, there's no bashing in the statement, but the problem, people say they don't care what he is as long as he's cute. Well, man, Doug, that makes my head feel like a pumpkin, under a D10 cat. I go, you don't care what he says unless he's cute? What, if the Antichrist shows up at Knickers and pulls the chain on the guillotine blade, it's good because he was cute in those knickers? We have the most devoid of reality population base ever. People won't even do the basic homework to look at MK Ultra and some of the mind control experiments. And yet now we've got neural implants, we've got John McInsane coming out of his brain issue and voting against Trump. We've got all the fake Republicans that basically, I can't even, I don't have a word yet for the contempt I have for those guys. How do you even begin, okay? If you're in a boat and you're the captain and you think everybody's rowing with you, but they're down in the hull of the ship drilling holes in the, hull or the keel, you're going to sink. You can give the best orders. You can even point your sails in the wind, but they're trying to sink him. So we must pray as Christians. Let me say this. I'm sorry, but the people that are out, and look, does that mean we morally give Trump a pass? Absolutely not. But I believe in something. I believe the simple statement that Jesus catches his fish before he cleans them. God doesn't gut sinners. He basically brings them to the conviction where they want to change, and then the Spirit of the living God is free to move in their lives to bring about the necessary change. And the thing is I'll tell you this. You know who's going to be, and you, LA, you know this too. And please, we've talked about this. The people who are going to fight the truth the hardest are the ones who are going to praise the falsehood the fastest. And I'm talking about claimants to Christianity. Go ahead, LA.
Well, again, Steve and Doug and Joe, it's just we talk about this stuff, and I know a lot of people will, they'll call it fear mongering. They'll say, you guys are always so negative, but it's like it's all reality. And if we were going to this one particular fellowship locally, and I won't mention any names. I really like the pastor; he's a great guy. Never a word about anything political. Never a word about anything prophetic. Never a word about anything about Israel. Nothing. We were there for a year, and I turned to my wife and I said, "I can't sit here anymore." I mean, I like the pastor. He's a really nice guy, but it's completely irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. And the problem is there's so many of the churches that literally have this lukewarm idea of Christianity. They want to play everything safe. Everything has to be safe. We want a soft landing place for our people. We don't want to scare the sheep. Nonsense. You want to warn the sheep. And hats off to you, Doug and Joe, for your show, because you're warning the sheep constantly. The people, like I know, Steve, we both get lots and lots and lots of emails. I get emails every single day, all week long, from people who have either come across the line for the first time and given their lives to Jesus because they realize he's the truth, the way, and the life, or they've come back to him because they left the church because they were, and this is true, they were watching Ancient Aliens and they became an Ancient Alien devotee. They took on that paradigm, that worldview, they embraced that, and they walked with it. And then they got a hold of my stuff, or your stuff, Steve, and other people, Tom Horn's stuff, and it changed them. And by the way, those three names are used over and over and over again. Dear LA, I watch your stuff, Tom Horn, Steve Quayle. We hear that over and over again. And what it does is it brings people back to not this lukewarm deal with Jesus, but they're on fire. And they look around and they realize, oh my gosh, prophecy's happening right under our noses. Why aren't more churches talking about it? And some churches are waking up, and that's fantastic. But it's just like the reason why Branson is sold out and there's 3,000 people there and live streaming is probably going to go through the roof, let's hope so, is because people are hungry. They're not hearing about it at their church. So when you assemble, Steve's got on the roster, people are going to walk away from that conference armed to the teeth. And they're going to know the truth, and the truth will make them free.
Amen. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, too, the anti-pope, let's call him that, calls Jesus in the Bible a lie. You know, Pope called him Jesus a sinner. You know, and what's incredible is that Jesus said the thief comes and has nothing in me. If Jesus wasn't sinless, he wouldn't have been God's ideal sacrifice. So the point is that he took upon himself the sin of the world, but he had no internal sin. So, you know, after doing this, and when I say writing, talking, 25 years, and thank you all who have sent me birthday greetings. Thank you so much, and belated birthday greetings and stuff. The point is that I'm on one crusade. Let's call it this, the last crusade. I don't believe it's my time to go, so I want to make that clear. But what I do believe is this. At this point in my life, I'm saying, Lord, bring people to my path, and this is the same thing, LA, I know you're claiming, and we're all claiming this, that have ears to hear. We're not telling you to take anything we say because we say it. Look, we are telling you to look at everything in the light of Scripture. And if some guy wants to come on, by the way, I challenge that person to an on-air debate. I know that debating is foolish, but I want to hear what he says about 1594, 1574 manuscripts from the chroniclers of the conquistadors. I want to know what he says about Og, king of Bashan. He said, well, the guy was a small guy who lived in a big bed. Yet Eusebius, the church father, the one that, some of these guys sealed their faith with their martyrdom, said that, he made King Og basically this thing, the identical person that the Romans worshipped as Saturn, and says that he's in stasis in the British Isles. And you can't understand the whole history of giants unless you go to the British Isles. LA was talking about the the geospatial coordinates and the archaeoastronomical coordinates of how all this stuff lines up. I want to make it really clear to everybody, prior to the flood of Noah, there was a massive pyramid culture throughout the world. It was in the days of Peleg that God divided the continents. So there was a supercontinent. Some people call it Gondwanaland. That's a hard one to try and spell. The others call it Pangea. That's easier. But the point is God does something. He separates, even at that time, before, and I don't know why God chose to separate the continents at that time, but I will tell you this, if at the end of God's patience, before he judged it, the fallen angels knew it was coming, by the way. You can't read the book of Enoch or the book of Giants not to know that. And for a free version, go on my website, Genesis6Giants.com, and click on the nav bar where it says ancient text. It's there free to look at. So the point is that they knew. You know, multitudes in the valley of decision for the day of the Lord is at hand. Let me make something clear. The day of the Lord comes at the end of the tribulation. We're going to go through, and I'm saying this, I speak for myself, but we're going to go through plenty of hell. And it's amazing. Do you think those guys that were beheaded for the testimony of Jesus, or all the Syrian Christians who died, were slaughtered, bombed, blown up, disemboweled? You know, and people say, I don't want to listen to your show. You just talk about gory stuff. Well, I got news for you. It obviously isn't registering because you still live in the world of Pollyanna on, there we go. I got a new one for everybody. Pollyannas on Prozac. They can't deal with reality, but they sure want their bloody Prozac to take those, incremental bits of reality. Oh no, reality's setting in. Give me another Prozac dipped binky, okay? So, you know, I can't sell them, but I'm sure somebody could start selling Prozac dipped binkies. They'd come into breaking the law, but hey, you know, it seems like that's where we're at. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be cynical, and I am, but here's the thing. It seems like no matter what LA does, no matter what Timothy Alberino does, and by the way, he's got real enemies that really don't like him. You don't go where he's gone in Rome and think you just, you know, get away free. God has intervened. Before they attempted to kill him and his family, his wife was awakened in the middle of the night, and the Lord said, Jasmine, get down and pray. And the point is that I can tell you this, that God warns his people before it comes. But I've asked the Lord, I don't know if you have, L.A., I said, Lord, what comes next? What revelations do you want? And I guarantee you that we as Christians have surrendered the narrative that there is one way to heaven, that's through Jesus Christ. Well, that's divisive. Absolutely. Solomon was ready to obviously use the child sacrifice to test the true love of the real mother. The real mother was willing to give up the baby rather than see it slaughtered. The non-real mother would rather see the baby slaughtered. Half of a live child in her mind was to make her point right. Solomon was wise enough to see through it. I ask myself this, Doug, and seriously, I'm asking everyone to think about this. If you look at the days of Babylon before they were conquered, the literal finger of God wrote on the wall when the king was having a great feast and all of his debauched madness, you know, your kingdom is divided, and it's going to be taken from you this very night. And so I think what's critical is this. What I believe, and I say this to the Lord, okay? I say, Lord, will you please write it out, spell it out, and make it so clear? And you know what? After I pray that, I say, what else could he do? You know, what else could he do? Voices from heaven, the people of God, the ones that saw his mighty works, they said, Moses, go talk to God. We don't want to hear from him directly. You know, Henry Gruber tells a story of people praying that, send down the glory, Lord, send down the glory, religious sounding. And God said, tell them to stop singing that. If I send down my glory now, half of them will die. Think that maybe put the fear of the Lord in a few people that sing songs, not even thinking what they sing? So here's the thing. We are on a quest to make known the hidden mysteries of history, the manifold cover-up, and in the mouth of 10,000 witnesses. If you want to deny it, if you want to think that, the tallest guy in the world was somebody, an ALA, wait until they find out about the little people that people are seeing all over the world. from the
right.
islands of Hawaii, the Menehune, to all over the Naripan in Thailand, and all of every single, the British we people, Iceland we people, Russian folklore we people, New Zealand, Australian we people. They're not all called we people. They got names I can't pronounce because they're in, Maori language or Maori language. But the point being, you cannot get away from it. The supernatural now is being thrust into, quote, the world of the denialists, and the denialists will either come to grips with it, come to Jesus, overcome it by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, loving not their life unto death, or they're going to succumb to it. And my concern is this. Jesus himself said, if he's told us earthly things and we believe him not, how can he tell us heavenly things? And my answer, Lord, is, Lord, it seems like nobody believes you on anything you say. Now, there are people that do, and a lot of them listen. I would say the majority of Christendom, and based on, you saw that, Joe and Doug, the what was it, the Gallup poll, or it was one of the polls, maybe George Barna poll. But, 50-60% of the Christians don't even believe there's a literal devil. That's just a metaphor for evil. Well, then how did evil originate? One paramecium got a bad attitude towards an amoeba and decided to maybe zap him with some more primordial